Imagine being in a place with some of the most beautiful canyons you have ever seen, resulting in a massive collection of stunning waterfalls that you can see from above and below. Imagine this area being open to tourism with captivating ecological parks in a general region where the temperate highlands start transitioning into the lush, green, tropical lowlands. Imagine out of all the waterfalls in the area, you happen to run into one of the highest waterfalls in North America. If you are imagining all of this, and if you are fascinated by discovering underexplored gems across the globe, then this is the video for you. So join me as we make it down a very deep canyon in the breathtaking Tuliman Ecological Park to discover one of the most impressive waterfalls on the continent. To get to this area, we arrived to the nearby town of Zacatlan de Las Manzanas, next to a stunningly beautiful canyon in the state of Puebla, Mexico. As you can tell by its name, this city used to have many apple orchards in the vicinity. Thus why Zacatlan is home to some very tasty apple pastries. This town also happens to be home to some of the most beautiful mosaics in this country, as you will see towards the end of the episode. We start off at the very beautiful and picturesque Central Plaza of Zacatlan. Here you find one of the oldest cathedrals in the Americas, Parroquia Franciscano de San Francisco de Asís. Before heading over to the waterfall, I decided to juice up with some matcha in a very charming coffee shop that I found next to the plaza. And of course, being that this city is known for really good apple pastries, I decided to buy some to fill up my stomach before going to the waterfall. And lucky for me, there was a lady in the plaza selling a basket of these pastries. So I purchased a few different ones from her and started munching on them as I continued walking around.
You know, it's times like this that you wish, or I wish, I could have this every day back at home. All right, guys, we continue our walk going north from the plaza while I'm eating this very delicious pastry, which tastes kind of like a strudel, but a lot softer. To check out some of these beautiful streets again, I cannot help but emphasize the beauty of the architecture and how they put these businesses that otherwise would look very bland inside these very beautifully kept historic buildings. Although I'm almost finished with this pastry, one of the things that I really liked is it did not feel very sweet. The filling was just right. It wasn't too sweet, too bland. It was honestly one of the best pastries I've had made with apple.
As I was walking away from the plaza, I decided to start looking for a taxi to give me a ride to the waterfall while there was still some daylight.
At an elevation of roughly 6,700 feet, this area definitely is one of the cooler towns in the country. And for those who like the cooler weather, this is definitely a place you might want to check out.
I finally find a taxi for what I call a mini safari ride to the canyon containing the Tuliman Falls. The ride to Tuliman is roughly 30 minutes, and I usually order a taxi round trip for these short excursions into nature, so that way I don't struggle finding a ride back. The first 5 to 10 minutes of the ride are spent leaving Zacatlan. And one of the first things that we see as we leave town are stunning viewpoints of the canyon next to the city, which is something we will be discovering towards the end of the episode, so stay tuned. We finally leave Zacatlan and get on the main highway to the neighboring city of Chignahuapan, which also happens to be another Pueblo Mágico. And on the way, we pass by what seem to be vacation homes. After about 15 to 20 minutes from leaving Zacatlan, we find a more minor road that takes us into the Tuliman Ecological Park near the town of San Joaquin, Tomatlan. A good portion of the road inside the park was unpaved, and we did see what seemed to be tour buses.
Now I understand why it takes half an hour to get here, because the road getting up to the entrance is good. Nice asphalt road. Now we have to deal with the dirt portion. But, you know, when the nature is beautiful, it's all good. You can actually hear the water, and I'm assuming that's the river that turns into the massive waterfall we're about to see.
We pass over what seems to be the river that leads to the waterfall. After veering off the main road for a few minutes, we finally arrive to the official entrance of the ecological park, where I purchase my wristband.
All right, guys, we are at the entrance of the park, and I believe it's 150 pesos. My official Tuliman, Cascadas de Tuliman wristband. Bienvenidos a Cascada de Tuliman. So slow, but so beautiful. All right, the decline begins. Look at these cute little cabaña looking. So I was told that this park has only been open for about 15 years, so it's pretty new.
As we started our descent down the canyon, the driver suggested that we check out a viewpoint along the way, and you're about to see why. For this viewpoint, we had to park on the side of the road and go down a short trail. This was definitely one of those moments when I felt like I was in paradise on Earth. I took a moment to observe the beauty in this area and look down the canyon towards the tropical lowlands from where you can see the clouds coming in.
All right, time to go back. All right, guys, the show goes on. And I have to say, aside from being beautiful, the air here feels incredibly clean.
We descend further into the canyon to reach Zone 1 of the ecological park, which is one of 3 zones where you find some of the most spectacular views of a big part of the waterfall. By the way, in Zone 1, it seemed like we were only halfway down the canyon, to give you an idea how deep these canyons are.
We're arriving to the first zones. So from what I was told, there are 3 zones. The first zone is the very beginning. It's the highest zone. And there's Zone 2 further down, and then after that, even a 3rd zone. Okay, we have arrived, guys. Not to the waterfall yet, but very close to it.
We parked the taxi in the parking area of Zone 1 and start walking down a fairly short trail to reach the waterfall.
It's because of areas like this that I miss this country every time I leave. It's fairly steep here. Not as steep as Tepoztlan, but pretty steep. Fortunately, because of the way the sun is not setting yet, but because we're kind of deep into the canyon now. The canyon itself is creating shade, so hopefully I can get a good lighting on the waterfall. Buenas.
It was roughly a 10 to 15 minute walk from the parking area in Zone 1 to the waterfall, and at this point we only have a little bit left.
The first time I'm seeing a good chunk of the waterfall.
As I was approaching the waterfall, the ambiance seemed so surreal, almost like something out of the movies, especially with the lush, vividly green vegetation and the noise of the water crashing down. The initial view is just of a very small portion of the waterfall. However, there is a set of stairs that you can climb to get an even more impressive view. But the catch is, you are likely to get very wet from the mist that the waterfall produces. From what I understand, the Tuliman Falls is about 1,000 feet high, which is almost the height of the Eiffel Tower, to give you some perspective, making it the 2nd highest waterfall in Mexico and one of the highest on the continent.
Oh yeah, I can definitely now start to feel the mist. Starting to get a little wet.
At about an hour after leaving Zacatlan, I finally get to enjoy a close-up view of one of the most beautiful places I have seen in the recent years. After this very memorable moment in nature, it was finally time to get back to the taxi.
I did not know that they gave these little sticks to help you climb. I didn't pay attention even though it was right in front of me. It's very interesting how in life sometimes we miss the things that are literally right in front of us. That's pretty cool. They give that for free. People just grab them and come back up and put them back.
After leaving Zone 1, the taxi driver suggested that we have to check out Zone 3, where the river that comes down this waterfall meets up with another river at the bottom of the canyon. So we drive another 10 to 15 minutes down to the bottom of the canyon in hopes of seeing this before we lose daylight.
All right, guys, we're in Zone 3, which is where two rivers come together. So let's check out this place, guys. So we're almost at the bottom. I don't think completely, but from here we'll be able to see, hopefully in some areas, the magnitude of how big this canyon is or how high it is. So the zone that we're in right now is right here. We're pretty much, like I said earlier, almost at the bottom. That's the parking lot. So apparently there are also sticks I can get here for the climb. So this time I'm gonna get it.
Just like the other zone, we see signs along the way asking people not to contaminate the environment with their trash. I also found out that this area has suspended pedestrian bridges which happen to be closed because of the late hour. From here, we follow the signs that show us where the Dos Rios or two rivers meet. After walking about 10 to 15 minutes from the parking area in Zone 3, we reached one of the two rivers, which happens to be the river from the waterfall, but of course at a much lower elevation. From here, I started looking for the other river, and the view that was awaiting me was just as stunning as the waterfall, seeing the water majestically carving through these massive rock formations. Using this river, I was finally able to trace where the two rivers meet. This experience put a big smile on my face, and I'm convinced it will likely do the same for you.
As this experience is coming to an end, the cost again, like I said, was 150 pesos, and 150 pesos is roughly $8. The gentleman, the taxi driver, who was wonderful, very understanding, very accommodating, charged me 500 pesos, but I'm going to give 700 just to kind of give a tip because of the generosity. Which with today's exchange rate, that's about maybe 36, 37, somewhere between 35 and $40. So altogether, we're looking at somewhere around $45. For me, any day. Very much worth it. After that hike, I got pretty hungry and I wanted to eat the last piece of pastry that I had left. And this is what they call pastel de manzana. But it literally looks like it has almost an entire apple inside. Looks delicious, looks actually pretty natural. What I love about this, again, like I said with the other pastry, is how it doesn't taste so sweet. Very delicious. Tastes very natural to me. All right, guys, we say goodbye to this beautiful canyon where we got to see the Tuliman Falls. And we can see the humidity coming up from the Gulf and making its way up to these higher elevations.
We take one last look at the mountains as well as the river that leads to the waterfall and fast forward the clock into the nighttime when we arrive back into town. The goal is to check out the city at nighttime and also to find something authentic to eat after such a long day of discovery. And as I was walking around, I ran into a large crowd following a band which I was told was a celebration for the Virgin of Santa Cecilia. This country never seems to stop surprising me with all of its festivities. At this point, I was starving, and lucky for me, I found this very beautiful restaurant serving local delicacies.
All right, guys, after walking around a little bit and seeing my options online, it seems like Mi Viejo Pueblito Zacatlan is going to be the go. It looked very beautiful from the outside as I was looking inside, and it has a fairly high rating, and it did have mole. Of course, when I'm in Mexico, I try to keep as much as I can to some of the authentic dishes that are hard to find in other places, and Puebla in particular is one of the states known for really good mole. And here we are.
From what I was told, this restaurant is from the state capital, which is also the city of Puebla. And to say this restaurant was beautiful is an understatement. So much creativity was put into the interior of the restaurant with the many different mosaics representing the city, and even a table filled with coffee beans. I started out with the drink made with mezcal and grapefruit juice, being that this region produces mezcal. And of course, I had to order the iconic dish, which is Puebla's famous sweet mole.
This world, Mole Poblano is kind of a sweeter mole, and it is very, very tasty. Almost has a very creamy texture, sweetness with a little bit of spice, just perfect.
I was even offered a taster of a mezcal that was supposedly the only mezcal produced in the Puebla region, which was a great compliment to the meal. After this wonderful experience, I wanted to finish off the night with another matcha in a cute coffee shop near the plaza, this time warm because of the cold weather. And lucky for me, I was able to catch the very tail end of the celebration for the Virgin of Santa Cecilia, which is now being held at Parroquia Franciscano de San Francisco de Asís.
Este amor apasionado. A ver, primero las mujeres. Y volver. Eso es lo que he escuchado las 3 veces. A ver, los puros hombres. Y volver.
Before the night ended, I discovered another walkway on the other side of the main plaza containing beautiful cafes, restaurants, and more notably the very prominent and stunning umbrella-covered Andador restaurant. Next to this restaurant, you find what is arguably one of the most iconic monuments of this city. This monument and the Andador restaurant look just as stunning the next day with the lively ambiance around it. One thing that I feel is a must when visiting Zacatlan is taking a walk on Paseo de la Barranca, which is a street that goes right next to the very deep and stunning Goldfinch's Canyon. Without a doubt, this is one of the main attractions and a major part of the essence of this city. This canyon is filled with life and nature, creating such a sharp contrast with the town above.
To be honest with you, even the video does not do this place justice. Walking around the street is surreal. On one side you have the town and almost a completely flat surface. And on the other side, you have this extremely deep canyon. From what I understand, these canyons are formed by rivers that flow down from the central Mexican plateau down to the Gulf. So it eroded away, of course, at the plateau and created these very spectacular canyons and mountains.
Keep in mind that this is barely the beginning of my walk along the canyon, and there are so many more interesting attributes further down, as you will see.
Alright guys, as we continue our journey forward, you start to see a lot of people. So this is definitely a very popular tourist destination, at least for locals. I don't think very many people outside of Mexico know about this place yet, but from what I understand, it is becoming popular. So things do change over time. Don't be surprised if you start hearing about this place very, very soon. Look at that dog. That's a beautiful dog. Looks like a Malamute.
As we continue our walk towards the main viewpoint on Paseo de la Barranca, it becomes more crowded. And with more people, you also find more vendors selling a variety of products. And we come across another tourist attraction, which happens to be an actual plane hanging over the canyon. From what I understand, this airplane is a Cessna that participated in an air show in 2011 and was donated to the town shortly thereafter. Talk about creativity, they even had a market underneath the sidewalk before the main viewpoint. Aside from vendors, this market also had some other interesting attributes, such as religious ornaments, more art representing the city, and even a model of a watermill overlooking the canyon. And at this point, we were right next to the main viewpoint, which you can see right above.
Guys, we're about to get to Puente Cristal Mirador, which is basically a viewpoint where the floors are actually made of glass, but you get that in a lot of areas where you have viewpoints like the Grand Canyon in the US. And this is definitely one of those places that's worth having something like this. And it's just right up those stairs. And it's interesting how they keep the rope so that you have to go by every booth, to give business to each one of those booths. Very smart.
And as I came upstairs from the market underneath, I was greeted with a long line for the Crystal Bridge viewpoint. As I was waiting in this long line, I was treated to beautiful views, including waterfalls that you could see in the canyon below the city.
As I wait in line, I get to see one of many waterfalls that you see in this region, as the rivers from the highlands transition to the canyons that lead to the lowlands. As we get ever so closer to the Crystal viewpoint, we also see another waterfall barely in the distance, but again, this area is full of waterfalls. I'll call this area the land of waterfalls.
After 20 to 30 minutes of waiting, I finally get my first shot at Puente Cristal Mirador de la Barranca, or Crystal Bridge viewpoint of the canyon.
Alright guys, with that we say goodbye to the Crystal viewpoint, and the next stop is literally right across the street, which are the famous murals of Zacatlan. I could already see them. Of course, I wanted to first finish the viewpoint before anything. Lovely people, some people helping me take videos, take pictures. People in this country tend to be very, very friendly. But let's start from the other side, and then we'll move our way this way.
From what I understand, these are some of the most impressive murals and mosaics in the country and surround the city cemetery next to the canyon. On the wall facing the canyon, you have mosaics representing the native culture, such as what seems to be the famous feathered serpent, or a mosaic representing Tonatiuh, which from what I understand is the Aztec god of the sun. On this side, we also find a variety of mosaics representing what seems to be the city's history and culture as they relate to the apple. On another wall of the cemetery along Calle Porfirio Diaz, you have mosaics representing what seem to be stories of a more religious type from the time of creation on forward. And though I'm not an expert in biblical history, the mosaics did seem to be in somewhat of a chronological order. And as I finally left the cemetery along the main street towards the center of town, I realized that this city has many more surprises up its sleeve, such as a vendor that was selling apple-flavored caramel, as well as what seemed to be locally made drinks from a variety of fruits, like this one that was made from pineapple, maracuya, and orange. And even a drink made from a flower, the cempasúchil flower.
Esta es de mandarina con la flor de cempasúchil. La hicieron
Flor de cempasúchil.
flor de cempasúchil.
Cempasúchil, ¿cómo se dice? Cempasúchil, okay.
Cempasúchil.
So this liquor is made from that flower, which you typically see during the Day of the Dead. Well, guys, they got me for about 200 pesos, which is about $11. I got a caramel made from apple and a liquor made from all the typical fruits, which was extremely tasty and supposedly has a lot of vitamin C. Go figure. So they convinced me, but you know, when you're in these places, you got to take advantage of all the natural products. Even the liquor tasted very, very natural. I haven't tasted something like that. Of course, it's not a very strong liquor. It tasted more like a wine, but just very tasty. I bought it really for the taste. It tasted almost like a fruit punch, but more natural.
I decided to continue walking around a little bit more before leaving Zacatlan. And as I make my last walk through town, I passed by the restaurant I patroned the night before, where I had myself a very tasty dish of mole. And I'm also astonished to see how crowded this town is for its size, which is something you do see with a lot of Pueblo Mágicos because of the tourism. Right before I left town, I bought myself some food for the road, such as these fresh blackberries being sold on the street, as well as the baked goods from a locally recommended bakery. After all of this, the time had finally come to walk back to my hotel, grab my things, and start my 2.5-hour journey back to Puebla. And on the way back, we once again passed by one of the largest active volcanoes in the world, which is Popocatépetl, at almost 18,000 feet. This volcano looms over and is a constant threat to the very fast-growing city of Puebla, which in itself is an amazing place to visit despite this danger. In conclusion, if you're looking for an exotic adventure in a place that I consider to be an underdiscovered hidden gem in an area with captivating nature, including some of the most beautiful canyons you will ever see, as well as a collection of some of the largest and most stunning waterfalls on the continent, a place with so much life and delicious food, and not to mention some of the most unique art you will ever see, then you might want to consider visiting the Pueblo Mágico of Zacatlan de Las Manzanas, a place that seems to be a piece of paradise on the edge of the world.